Y'all know what's going on. It's time for another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker. Welcome to Generations of Grit, a tale of turf and legacy. It had been 6 months since little Malik had been laid down. Let's say it like that. The toll it was having on Marcus was evident to everybody around him. He had become a ticking time bomb, a violent adrenaline junkie, getting his high not from drugs or alcohol, but from reckless, violent behavior. He would just roam the streets at night, staying out late, looking for fights, picking fights with people that he knew were not going to fight him back because they knew who he was. But it didn't matter to him. If he saw some people standing on the corner in the neighborhood that he was living in now, not the old neighborhood, because if he was in the old neighborhood, even though he's Elijah's grandson and Jamal's son, they wouldn't tolerate him doing what he's doing. But he would pull up on people in the neighborhood that he was in. And don't get me wrong, things went on in the neighborhood that he lives in now, but he knew that this was a different type of gangster. Back in the old neighborhood, they were cut from a different cloth. So he was picking fights with people to validate himself, to make him feel like, to make himself feel like he was somebody, because he knew when he was there and little Malik got laid down, he knew that he was afraid. He knew in that moment that he may not be cut out for this lifestyle. He was not like his father. He was not like his grandfather. And on some level, that bothered him. Now, his mother, she had no clue as to what he had seen and what he had been through and what he was going through. So she didn't know what to do. So she had recommended one day when Jamal had called home her husband, she recommended that he go to therapy. She wanted him in therapy because she wanted him to get some help. Now, she didn't tell Marcus this. She was telling Jamal this. And Jamal was totally against it, saying, my son is not going to therapy. Now, it wasn't that he didn't want Marcus to get help. No, that's not what his concern was. His concern was that Marcus might get in a therapy session and say something that he had no business saying, according to Jamal. Because in therapy, they ask you all kinds of questions. What is going on with you? Why are you feeling like this? And when did it start? And what was the event that you think that triggered this? What happened? They're going to get to the heart of the matter. And if they get to the heart of the matter, they're going to find out that Marcus was involved in a murder. And another thing that Jamal didn't want Marcus to realize is that him and Jack, they were used as bait. Yeah, Marcus was going to be kidnapped. Yeah, all of this and that. But in his mind, he started to see it like, why did I have to be there? If you knew, if his grandfather and his father knew that little Malik was trying this stuff, why did he need to be there? What if little Malik would have came in guns blasting? See, all of these things are playing in his head now, and he's lost. And he has nobody to talk to. So his erratic behavior, it was escalating. He was becoming more disrespectful at school, getting into more fights with people that he knew were not going to fight him back. And this wasn't Marcus, and everybody knew it. So something had to be done before something bad happened. Now, Jamal didn't think that Marcus's acting out was a big deal. He didn't take it as serious as he should have. He was a teenager, and sometimes that's what teenagers do. That's how he rationalized this thing. Now, Elijah, he had concerns. He had seen this before. He knew what this was. This boy had been traumatized. His grandson had been traumatized, and he couldn't handle it. And in the lifestyle that you live in the streets, no therapists, it's no being weak, as they say. You suck it up and you deal with it. And that's what Jamal wanted Marcus to do. But that's tricky. That's tricky. Because sometimes when a person experiences something traumatic, they act out aggressively to cover up the fear. And Jamal didn't want to accept the fact that his son was scared because he didn't know how to deal with that. He had no fear. So he didn't know how to counsel him. He didn't know how to console him. And so it led to more and more acting out. Now, everybody knew and agreed on one thing. If that's what's going on, we better do something. Because this is the type of behavior that could lead you to prison or the graveyard. And the prison and the graveyard is full of people that went through the same thing that Marcus was going through. And they couldn't handle it. Could not deal with it. So they knew they had to do something. Now, everybody knew Marcus anytime he came around. He would hear the whispers, that's Elijah's grandson, or that's Jamal's son, right? And he was sick of it. He wanted everybody to know that he was his own man, that he wasn't afraid of anybody. And in his mind, he was just as tough and capable as they were. That's what he wanted to believe. And he was going to set out to prove it. He was more than anything trying to prove it to himself. And as the grandson and the son of the most powerful gang in the city, Marcus was seen as a member by birthright. He hadn't put in any work, though. And a lot of people resented that. Even Marcus resented that. So, he didn't have to be initiated, y'all. And if he asked for money or favor or anything from any member of the Ravens, they were more than happy to accommodate him, hoping that he would mention their name to his pops or his grandfather. Put in a good word for me. You know what I'm saying? So when he came around wanting to hang out on the street corners, they didn't think much of it. They saw it as an opportunity to gain favor. And that's why a lot of the things that he did, they tolerated. But Marcus knew that, so he exploited it. I'm going to show everybody that I can hold my own. That's what he would say. Marcus pulled up and got out of his car. And immediately, a few of the brothers his age approached and greeted him. Now, this is when he was he went to the old neighborhood because he wanted some more action. They talked about what teenagers usually talk about, girls, cars, movies, etc., stuff like that. Marcus wasn't impressed. So he said, what's really going on out here? Where's the action at? Now they look at him. They're confused about what he was asking them because this is the heir. This is the prince. Why are you asking about the action? What action? We just chilling right now, they said. The business don't happen over here. But see, he didn't know that because he didn't know how the thing worked. And they said he should have known that. That's what they were thinking. On this block, no one was allowed to sell drugs or anything like that. On this block, they just chilled out. But this is the old neighborhood. But they told him, look here, if you want action, you need to go upstairs and talk to Paul. Now, Paul, that's what he said. Who is Paul? And Paul is the overseer for this side of town. And he tells us where to go and what to do. Marcus didn't know that. So he said, come on. One of the young guys. He said, I'll take you to him. He'll be happy to see you. Now, that's because this is Elijah's grandson. They're not happy to see him because he's bringing business. They got the business. They just want to, greet the prince, the heir. And when they get to the door, there was this man standing guard. He was like a big old dude, standing there about 6'4", muscles everywhere. He wore his pistol so everybody could see it. You know what I'm saying? He didn't have to hide anything because on this side of town, they ran everything. They didn't have to worry about the police pulling up or anything like that. They had this side of the city on lock. And he didn't recognize Marcus. So he said, who are you? And why are you up here? Nobody sent for you because only the people that have been sent for come upstairs. So the young dude that was escorting Marcus, he said, look, his name is Marcus. This is the chief's grandson. See, because they call Elijah chief on that side of town. You know what I'm saying? They didn't call him the pops or granddad. They called him chief. Now the guard, his eyes bulged right, and he looked closer at Marcus. He's like, "Oh man, my bad. I didn't recognize you. What do you need, little bro?" And then the other little brother said, "We need to see Paul." And Marcus echoed that and said, "Yeah, I need to see Paul." He said, "Okay, hold on. Let me step inside real quick just to check. No disrespect, though. You know what I'm saying? Let me just check and see. You know what I'm saying? I got my job to do." I said, "Okay, that's cool. I get that." So now Marcus is standing at the door with this young guy that he met downstairs, and they're waiting. Then the bodyguard opened the door and stepped out. And he glanced at Marcus real quick. And he said, "Look, come on in." Paul said, "He'll see you. He's waiting to see you. He's in the second room on the right." And when they stepped in, they were greeted by another bodyguard. He said, "Follow me. Walk behind me," because didn't nobody walk up on Paul without an escort. That's just the business, no matter who you are. You know what I'm saying? You had to be the chief himself to walk up in there without that. You know what I mean? So he walked into the room where Paul was waiting and opened the door. And when he opened the door, Marcus was shocked to see that Paul wasn't an old man. He looked to be about the same age as he was, maybe a couple of years older. Paul was cool, though. He stood up and made his way to Marcus and the young G and said, "Look here, what's up? What can I do for you, brothers? Nobody told me that you were coming to be in this part of town, bro." He said, "If I would have known that, I would have thrown you a party." He's real respectful. He said, "How's Chief and the old man doing?" asked Paul. "They're good. I talk to them every night," said Mark. "Well, do me a favor and let them know that everything is good over here. I don't play no games." Marcus nodded his head. "I got you. I got you." So Marcus and Paul, they hit it off. They were about the same age, like I say. Paul was a little older. So they spent the next couple of hours just discussing the business. Paul was breaking it all down because Marcus was asking him all kinds of questions about this and that and that and that, and wanted to know how things ran. Now, after he left, on the way home, Marcus, he was wondering why he wasn't allowed to do what Paul was doing. They were around the same age. He didn't get that. He didn't even know the thing worked like that. And then it was by sheer coincidence that Elijah called Paul that same night to check up on the spot. Now, after they concluded the business, he told Elijah, "Look, Marcus dropped by, your grandson." And Elijah never wanted to appear like he didn't know what was going on. He tried to play it off and say, "Oh, okay, did you take care of him?" He's like, "Yeah, of course. In fact, he told me that he would be back tomorrow." "Okay. Just make sure you keep him on a tight leash. He's just trying to find his way." And Paul said, "I got you, Chief." So when they got off the phone, Elijah, he's sitting there wondering what's going on. Now, he didn't say anything to Marcus about being at the spot. He didn't see it as a big deal. And he didn't want to tell Jamal either. And besides, Paul was one of the most capable lieutenants, so Elijah knew he was in good hands. So he left it at that and kept it moving. But he was wondering what is going on. Because like I say, he had seen this before. Somebody trying to find their way after they were involved in something as traumatic as what Marcus was involved in. He's trying to figure out things, find his direction. So that night, when his father called, Marcus didn't say anything about his visit with Paul. And when his father asked about his day, he told him that nothing really unusual happened. It was the same old. But when his grandfather, didn't even ask about his day, because he didn't want Marcus to have to lie to him, after a few minutes of idle chit-chatter, they said their goodbyes and hung up. Now Marcus, he was paranoid. It was getting to him. And he wondered, did they know? Because it wasn't like his grandfather not to ask. And he knew that his grandfather never did anything by sheer coincidence. Nothing. But it didn't matter. He said, until they tell me to stop, I'm going to keep going. The morning came fast, and, Marcus was back to it. This time he didn't need an introduction. Paul was waiting on him. Paul didn't drink or smoke, but he didn't know if Marcus did, so he had weed and drinks ready. Marcus had never drank or smoked anything, and he wasn't about to start that day either. And Paul was cool with that. You know what I'm saying? He was glad to learn that, Marcus didn't indulge in things like that. That kind of stuff clouded your judgment. That's what Paul always thought. But he was impressed with Marcus because Marcus was like a sponge. He wanted to know everything, every aspect of the business. And Paul was more than eager to teach him. To Paul, it was an honor to teach the chief's grandson the business. So he told him everything he needed to know, not holding back, pointing out everything and testing him to make sure he understood, asking him questions over and over, making sure that he understood exactly what he needed to do and what his responsibilities would be if he ever did this. So everything seemed good. No real issues had surfaced. And this is how Malik started to, since Malik's departure anyway, no real issues would surface. And it wasn't that things weren't happening. Marcus was starting to find his way. He was starting to find his way. But it wouldn't last, though. Elijah knew from experience that peace wasn't the norm in the streets. Chaos was. And Marcus, again, unbeknownst to him, was going to find himself in a situation where he wouldn't be prepared, but he was going to have to learn on the job. And that's just the nature of the business. That concludes this episode of Generations of Grit. This has been another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and I say peace, y'all.